He gave his last meal to a stranger in the snow, but by sunrise his barn was surrounded by soldiers. Would you risk everything for someone you barely knew? Now, before we begin, if you're into stories of quiet courage and found family, we'd be grateful to have you subscribe and stay a while. Snow whispered against the barn roof, soft as breath. Inside, a single flame danced in a rusted lantern, casting long shadows across hay-strewn floors and saddle hooks worn smooth by time. Calder Dane sat near it, cross-legged, boots unlaced, a wool blanket draped over his shoulders. His fingers moved slow over the edge of an old wooden bowl, scrubbing it dry more out of ritual than need. He'd already eaten, or rather, he'd watched Maisie eat. She didn't ask why he passed his portion to her. She was only 7, and children could accept love in the shape of silence. Her cheeks were flushed from cold, but her eyes had the same tired shine as the snow outside. She'd fallen asleep in a hayloft above, wrapped in quilt stitched by a woman who hadn't spoken in years. He didn't say his wife's name aloud anymore. The barn didn't ask for it. Wind pressed gently against the slats, the kind of wind that didn't carry threat, just memory. It smelled faintly of cedar and wood smoke. Calder leaned back against the stall, letting the cold creak close but not touch. Then came the sound. Not wind, not fox, boots. A slow, uneven crunch through the crust of snow, faint but certain. Calder rose, every joint stiff with ache. He didn't reach for his coat, just a rifle by the door. He moved toward it barefoot. Each step a whisper. Another crunch. He pushed the barn door open just wide enough to see the edge of the tree line. The moon had risen thin and silver, illuminating the field in bone-colored light. And then she came into view, barely a shape half collapsed, dragging one foot behind the other. A woman, uniformed, worn down to thread and dirt. She was bundled in layers that looked pieced together from different places. Military pants, a civilian coat 2 sizes too small, one glove missing. Her breath came in broken clouds, and her hands stayed out, palms open, even when she saw the barrel of his rifle. "I'm not here to hurt anyone," she said, voice rough from cold or days without use. "I just need somewhere to sleep." Calder didn't move, didn't lower the rifle. He watched her sway, one knee buckling slightly before she righted herself. "What's your name?" he asked, flat but not unkind. "Ray," she said. "Just Ray." Then she fell. By the time he got to her, the snow had already begun dusting her hair. He lifted her beneath the arms, surprised by how light she was. Bones and canvas. He carried her inside and laid her on a blanket by the lantern. It flickered over her face, ashen but young, maybe late 20s. Her lips were cracked, her cheeks scratched like she'd fought briars. Maisie stirred above. Calder looked up quickly. "Sho," he whispered. No reply, just a child's sleepy rustle, the soft exhale of safety. He turned back to Ray and pressed 2 fingers to her neck. A pulse, fast but there. He pulled off her wet boots and rubbed warmth into her feet. One sock was missing. Frostbite hadn't set in, not yet, but it was close. The last of the jerky was in a tin above the saddle hooks. He hesitated a long time before he fetched it, broke off a piece, and set beside her, along with a dented tin cup of boiled water he'd kept near the fire. He didn't wake her. Instead, he sat across from her, rifle between his knees, and watched the wind dance with the flame. Ray didn't wake until morning. Not suddenly, but in pieces. Her eyes blinked slowly at the rafters, then at the light that peeked through loose boards. She turned her head. Calder was still there, back against the stall post, eyes closed but upright. He opened them a beat later. Maybe he'd been listening to her breathing. She didn't sit up right away, just reached slowly for the cup and took a sip. "You're lucky you weren't dead when I found you," he said, voice still coated in sleep. "Maybe I was," she muttered, clearing her throat. "Thanks anyway." She ate the jerky in small bites, wincing slightly with each chew. Maisie's voice drifted from above. "Papa?" Calder stood slowly. "Stay there, baby. I'll be up in a bit." Ray's eyes followed the sound, but she didn't speak. Calder moved toward the ladder, then paused. You military? She nodded barely. Was. He didn't ask more. The barn didn't need stories. Not yet. By noon, she'd sat up, leaning against a bale of hay. Calder brought her a second cup of warm water and a slice of apple, the last one they had. She didn't refuse. You got a name? She asked finally. Calder. That your daughter? He nodded. Maisie. Ray looked toward the loft. She's small. She's tough. Ray smiled faintly, cracked lips pulling sideways. Tough's the quiet ones. He didn't reply, just sat near the stove and fed another stick into it. Why help me? She asked. You don't know me. I know cold, he said simply, and I know what it does. That evening, Ray offered to help with chores. Calder shook his head. You're not there yet. I'm not dead either. He watched her rise slowly, gripping the stall rail like a lifeline. You'll just slow me down, he said. She shrugged. Still better than nothing. She followed him outside, the snow crunching under mismatched boots. The sky was soft pink above the ridge, the last light hanging on the edge of silence. They fed the mule, checked the frozen pump, scattered grain for the chickens who hadn't died in the last frost. She didn't complain once, just moved slowly, carefully, like someone used to pain and pretending otherwise. Maisie stood at the window, watching them. Her breath fogged the glass. She didn't wave. Ray didn't wave back. Trust takes longer when it's been broken in too many places. After dark, Calder lit another lantern. Ray sat near the stall, hands around a cracked mug of weak tea. Where you heading? He asked. She looked down into the cup. Don't know any more. I think I just kept walking. Somebody after you? Ray's jaw shifted. Yeah. Who? People who used to wear the same uniform I did. Calder nodded once, slow. I ain't looking to bring trouble here, she said. I didn't say you were. She looked up. Her eyes were green, rimmed with red from cold and sleep. I'll be gone in the morning. Calder didn't answer. Later that night, after Ray had curled up near the fire, he climbed the loft ladder and sat beside Maisie. She was awake. Barely. Who is she? She whispered. Just someone passing through. Maisie looked at him for a long time. Then, is she good? He didn't lie. I don't know yet. Maisie nodded once, sleep already reclaiming her. Calder stayed there a while longer, listening to her breathe, the way he used to listen to his wife sleep beside him. That same rhythm, that same comfort. Before blowing out the lantern, he reached into his coat pocket and took out the unopened letter again. The paper had yellowed at the edges. Her handwriting still looked like dancing. He didn't open it, just held it. Below in the barn, Ray's breathing hitched softly in her sleep. Outside, the wind shifted. Not sharp, just different. And in that difference, far off beyond the trees, something else moved. Boots. Too many. Too organized to be wanderers. Calder didn't reach for the rifle. Not yet. He just stood in the dark and listened. And in that hush, between firelight and footsteps, the weight of kindness settled like snow. The wind that morning wasn't sharp. It came in quiet, circling the barn like a thought you couldn't quite name. Not cold enough to bite, but it carried something, a shift, subtle and strange. Calder felt it before he opened his eyes. Ray was already up. He saw her silhouette by the barn doors, motionless, shoulders square but still. A soldier's stillness. The kind of stillness that listens. She didn't move when he stirred behind her, didn't glance over her shoulder, just kept watching the tree line where snow draped the pines in morning whites. He stepped closer. Something out there? She blinked slow. Not yet. Her voice had less gravel now. Still low but clearer, like sleep had dusted off a corner of her that had been buried. He didn't press further, just stood beside her, arms folded, letting the silence stretch between them. The field lay undisturbed, wide, blank, waiting. Maisie's voice came down soft from the loft. Papa, is she still here? Calder looked up, saw her eyes peeking between quilts. She is. Maisie's gaze dropped to Ray. Curious. Wary. Ray raised a hand in a quiet hello, then lowered it without waiting for a response. Maisie didn't wave back. Later, Calder poured 2 mugs of thin coffee. He handed one to Ray without ceremony. She took one, gnawed, and sat on a hay bale, feet tucked beneath her. Calder leaned against a stall post, letting the warmth rise into his hands. I saw her, Ray said, eyes on the rising steam. Saw who? Your daughter. He waited. She looks like someone who understands more than she's supposed to. Calder gave a quiet hum. She's had to. Ray didn't ask why. She didn't have to. They sipped in silence. By mid-morning, Ray was outside with him, sleeves rolled, helping patch the east barn wall where the boards had bowed from frost. She didn't speak unless necessary, but her movements were sure, measured. The limp still tugged at her left side, but she worked through it. Calder watched as she hammered a plank into place, her grip tight, jaw clenched from the cold. You don't have to do this, he said. I know, she replied. I want to. They didn't look at each other after that, just worked. Inside, Maisie stayed near the stove. She held her mother's scarf in her lap, fingers moving along its frayed edges. She didn't speak much that day, just watched the barn door whenever Ray was near it. At one point, she rose, climbed down the ladder barefoot, and set her favorite book on the hay near Ray's blanket. A quiet offering. Ray saw it hours later. She didn't say anything, but when Maisie peeked again from the loft, Ray had it open in her lap. The afternoon light was soft and golden, filtered through the high barn windows. Calder sat sharpening a blade near the fire. Ray stood at the stall door, her fingers drifting along the frame like she was counting years by touch. I used to play, she murmured. Calder looked up. Play what? She turned, held up something she'd found. A dented harmonica, rusted, dented at the corners, but still recognizable. He watched as she brought it to her lips and played 3 notes, wavering, soft, like memory. Can't remember much, she said after. Sounded like you did. Ray smiled, faintly, not enough to finish the song. Maisie listened from above, her head half hidden in quilts. The sound settled over them like dust, quiet and familiar. When night came, the cold was gentler than the one before. They sat close to the fire, Ray tending it with practiced care. Maisie had come down again, this time to sit beside her father, thumb in her mouth, head on his shoulder. Ray didn't reach out, didn't say a word, but she watched the girl with a softness Calder hadn't seen before. He noticed Ray wince when she shifted, her hand trembling slightly. Her body still carried something. Pain or memory. Maybe both. You hurt. She nodded once. Old wound. Nerve damage. How'd it happen? She looked into the fire. I didn't pull the trigger. Calder said nothing. My unit was given the order. We were supposed to clear a village. Thought it was enemy occupied. Her jaw tightened. It wasn't. The silence in the barn deepened. I walked away, she finished. That's when they started hunting me. Calder nodded slowly. You still walking? She looked over at Maisie, then back to the fire. Not sure. Later that night, as Calder added wood to the stove, Ray stood and walked outside without a word. He followed 10 minutes later. Found her crouched near the tree lean, hand pressed to the earth. What is it? Tracks, she said. Fresh. Animals? No. Her breath fogged between them. I saw movement, she said. Could have been scouts. Could have been ghosts. Either way, someone's been watching. Calder's grip tightened around the lantern handle. Then we leave at first light, he said. No, Ray said. You stay. You're not deciding that for us. I already did. Their breath hung between them in the cold. You brought kindness into a war zone, she said quietly. That makes you vulnerable. He didn't reply, just looked out into the woods. A stillness had settled in the trees, too still. When they came back inside, Maisie was curled in Ray's blanket, holding the harmonica. She was cold, Ray said, her voice nearly breaking. I didn't want to move her. Calder looked at them both. Maisie murmured something in her sleep and turned toward Ray, fingers brushing the soldier's coat. Ray didn't move, just sat down beside her, hands still, heart louder than breath. Hours passed with no words. Calder leaned against the wall near the door, rifle across his lap. The fire burned low, soft amber against the wood. Ray stared at the harmonica in Maisie's hand. I never had a daughter, she said. Still don't, Calder answered gently. Ray nodded once. But she's got room in her heart, he added. And just that was enough. Outside, the wind picked up. Not the kind that howls, the kind that carries orders. Boots would follow, and soon. But inside the barn for now, a soldier slept near a child, and a man who'd given away his last meal sat watching them, eyes heavy, heart full. No one spoke of morning, only of quiet, only of now. The morning didn't come with color, just light, thin and pale like breath held too long. Snowflakes drifted without urgency, dissolving before they could settle. The wind had hushed, and in that hush, there was a sound of boots. Not one pair, not even 10, 200. Calder felt them before he heard them, the way animals sense tremors underground. He sat upright on the barn floor, pulse silent but firm, eyes already on the rifle resting in the corner. Across from him, Ray was lacing her boots, quick, practiced, silent. Her coat was already on. She hadn't slept much, or maybe at all. You knew? He asked, not accusing, just steady. Ray didn't answer until her gloves were on. They always sent a warning, if you know what to listen for. Maisie stirred from the loft above. Calder looked up. I'll get her, Ray said. He didn't argue. He watched as Ray climbed the ladder, with a soldier's precision but a sister's softness. She knelt beside Maisie and whispered something. Maisie blinked slow, then sat up. She didn't cry, didn't even ask why. Ray carried her down the ladder with care, wrapped her in a quilt, and handed her over to Calder. Cellar, Ray said, under the feed bins. You'll be safe there. Maisie clung to him like a heartbeat. He looked to Ray. You come with us. But she was already strapping a knife to her thigh. I'm not dragging you into this. It's too late for that. Their eyes locked. Something passed between them. Not surrender. Not resistance either. Just shared understanding. Then came the crackle. A loudspeaker. Distant but clear. Sergeant Ray Ellison. You are surrounded. Come out with your hands visible. You have 10 minutes. Maisie whimpered. The first sound she'd made. Ray crouched down, brushed her hair gently. I won't let them hurt you, she whispered. You understand? Maisie nodded, eyes wide, mouth trembling. Then Ray turned to Calder. Whatever happens, don't come out. Not unless they breach. I'm not hiding while you. She shook her head once. Please. The word stopped him, not because of what it meant, but how she said it. Soft, like a final breath. He kissed Maisie's head, then pulled her close as they slipped to the false floor behind the feed bins. The cellar was shallow, dry, and lined with old quilts. A single lantern burned low beside a crate of apples nearly gone to rot. He listened to Ray's footsteps above. Then nothing. When Ray stepped outside, the snow had turned to sleet. It felt like shattered glass, tiny, glinting, relentless. She walked with her hands up, palms open, breath white against her face. Soldiers flanked the field, camouflage against the white. Dozens, maybe more. She stopped 10 feet from the porch. A man stepped forward, tall, black coat, polished boots. Major Harrow. She recognized the tilt of his chin, the hollow behind his eyes. He didn't blink as he looked at her. You know why we're here, he said. She said nothing. You fled, he continued. You disobeyed. And you left 2 men behind to die. Ray blinked. I buried them. That's not what command says. I know, she whispered. The snow around them fell in thicker waves. You killed a man, Ray. I saved civilians. You abandoned your oath. I remembered it. Silence rang sharper than any bullet. Then another voice, tentative, from among the soldiers. Sarge. Ray turned. A young man, barely 20, rifle lowered, face pale, stepped out from the second line. Corporal Mendez, she said. He nodded, swallowing hard. You pulled me out of that fire in Karat Pass. She smiled just slightly. Didn't think you remembered. I do, he said. Every day. The major's voice snapped cold. Fall back, Corporal. But Mendez didn't move. Ray's eyes swept the line. Not every rifle was steady. Not every hand was certain. I'll come with you, she said finally, raising her voice just enough to carry. Just let the child go unharmed. The man, too. They didn't know who I was. The major stepped closer. You're not making the rules here. No, Ray said, but neither are you. Not out here. From the cellar, Calder heard every word. He held Maisie close, heart thudding slow, but hard. Maisie whispered, Is she gonna die? He didn't answer. He couldn't. Outside, Ray let her arms lower, slowly, deliberately. I'm not running, she said. I never was. Another soldier stepped forward. Not Mendez. A woman, blonde, freckled, rifle slung back. She looked at Ray for a long moment. Then she knelt, pulled off her glove, and placed a small black box in the snow. A recorder. Ray's voice softened. You don't need proof. The woman replied, But maybe we do. The major's jaw clenched. Then the harmonica broke the silence. A note, thin, wobbly, soft as a lullaby. Maisie. She had come up from the cellar, quilt trailing, bare feet in the snow, holding the harmonica with 2 hands like it was a shield. She walked toward Ray without a word, eyes locked on her. The soldiers didn't stop her. Not one moved. She reached Ray, placed the harmonica in her hand, and stepped back. And Ray, she cried, just one tear, cut down her cheek like a crack through armor. Then she played 3 notes, same as before. This time, stronger. A soldier lowered his weapon. Then another, and another, until only the major stood firm. You'll answer for what you did, he said. I already have, Ray said. He looked at the others, saw what had shifted, what had melted. He turned without another word, and they followed him. But Mendez stayed. He knelt in front of Ray, set a pack down beside her. Food, rations, medical tape. Use what you need. Ray nodded, eyes meeting his. Thank you. For what? He asked. For surviving. By the time Ray walked back into the barn, Calder and Maisie were waiting by the fire. Ray stood in the doorway, soaked in sleet, cheeks burning red. Calder moved first. He crossed to her, slow but sure, and took her pack from her shoulders. Maisie stepped forward and placed the harmonica gently on a blanket by the fire. No one spoke. The fire crackled. Ray sank down onto the straw and let herself be still. And Calder, without a word, pulled his late wife's quilt from the loft and draped it over her shoulders. Not because she was weak, but because she had stood alone long enough. Outside, the world remained gray and cold. But inside, a new warmth began to grow. Not loud, not sudden, just steady, like trust, like family, like a second chance. The sun rose like a secret that didn't need to be told. Not loud, not golden, just a slow brightening of the frost-covered world. Soft light brushing barn walls, warming the frost on fence posts until it wept and disappeared. The snow had begun to melt in places, leaving wet earth beneath it like something waking. Ray stood on the porch, eyes half closed, face turned to the light. No boots in the distance. No orders. No sound to command. Only bird song, fragile and unsure, like even they were trying to remember peace. Maisie sat behind her, cross-legged with a tin pail of hair ribbons. She was brushing Ray's tangled braid with both hands in all the solemn care of a surgeon. "You sit still like a statue," she said quietly. Ray smiled. "I was trained that way. I think you make a good sister," Maisie added after a beat. "If you ever wanted to be one." Ray turned slightly, not enough to break the braid in progress. "I didn't have a sister," she said. "Just a little brother. He used to hum when he couldn't sleep. Drove me crazy." Maisie dipped her head. "You miss him?" "I didn't get to say goodbye." They sat with that. Some truths don't ask for comfort, just room to be said aloud. Inside the barn, Calder chopped wood. The rhythm was clean, deliberate. His hands remembered the weight of the axe like it had never left. The noise echoed soft against the thawing walls, not jarring, just steady, a language of its own. Between each swing, he glanced toward the house. Still standing. Still empty. He hadn't stepped foot in it since the first frost, not since the stove quit, and the rooms began to feel haunted by things that used to smell like lilacs and bread. Today, though, he thought about unlocking the door, not to move back in, just to let the light in. Later, Ray knelt in the barn beside Maisie, showing her how to knot twine into loops. "These hold your chickens out of trouble," she said, tying slowly. "They're stubborn animals. You gotta outsmart them with softness, not force." Maisie nodded, her brows furrowed in concentration. "Is that what you did with the soldiers?" Ray still for a second, then resumed nodding. "No," she said. "I just reminded them we weren't enemies yet." Maisie didn't quite understand, but she accepted the answer. Ray handed her the finished twine. "Want to help me wrap it around the pen?" Maisie smiled. "Okay." That afternoon, Calder brought down a shoebox from the rafters. Dust coated the lid. The label was torn, but he didn't need it to know what was inside. The letter, still sealed, still folded the same way she'd left it. He walked past Ray and Maisie, who were gathering eggs from the coop, and sat beside the fire inside. He turned the envelope in his hands like it might disappear if he looked at it too hard. Then Ray came in. She didn't speak, just sat down across from him and waited. He stared at the name on the envelope. Hannah Dane, his name written beneath hers. Finally, he tore it open. He didn't read it aloud, but Ray watched his face shift, eyes flickering, throat tightening, breath held, and then releasing something like a silent sob. After a while, he handed it to her. She took it slowly, like it might burn. Inside, the words were short. "If you ever feel like you're alone, feed someone. It's what you do best. Love doesn't need a door to knock on. It just needs a place to rest." Ray folded it gently and handed it back. "She knew you." Calder nodded once, tears in his eyes. "Better than I did myself." They spent the rest of the day mending the barn roof. Maisie handed them nails. Ray held the ladder. Calder hammered. The sun cast long shadows, and dust glimmered in the light like something holy. They worked without music, but something inside all of them hummed. Not joy, but belonging. That night, Ray cooked. She insisted. Made something warm out of dry beans, onion ends, and a single potato they found buried under straw. It wasn't a feast, but it filled the space with steam and the scent of salt and hope. They ate in the barn, seated on crates and hay bales, lit by one lantern and a single candle Ray found in her rucksack. Maisie held Calder's hand. Ray broke bread into smaller pieces, like it was a habit from some other life. No one spoke. They didn't have to. After dinner, Ray played the harmonica again. Only this time, she didn't stop at 3 notes. She found the rest of the melody. Fragile, imperfect, but whole. Maisie hummed along, soft and off-key. Calder tapped his boot, eyes closed. Ray looked at them both. And for the first time, the ache in her chest didn't feel like a wound. It felt like a memory healing. When the fire dimmed and the barn slipped into quiet again, Calder stood and walked over to Ray. He didn't speak, just offered her a second pillow. She took it, nestled it beside the quilt Maisie had already pulled around her. Before Calder turned away, he paused. "You're welcome to stay," he said. Ray looked up. "If you want," he added. "We've got an extra plate." She nodded. That was all. Outside, the world had stopped snowing. Stars blinked above the hills. Inside, the barn glowed faintly with warmth, not just from fire, but from the simple, holy act of three people choosing not to be strangers anymore. And in the stillness, found family bloomed without announcement, quiet, undemanding, but real, like the echo of a song you didn't know you remembered. If this story touched you, subscribe or share where you're watching from. These stories matter.